Sure. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It is truly a pleasure to be with you all this evening. Thank you, Daniel, for organizing and convening this effort. I'm excited to spend the next 90 or so minutes with you all. My name is Jessica Schaefer, and I oversee the highest immigration and citizenship program at JCFS Chicago, and I will explain a lot more about who we are, what we do, and how we work with the National Highest Organization. I'm curious from all of you, I don't know if we have time for sort of full introductions, but if folks want to sort of share what's brought you to this space this evening, I think that would be helpful. A little bit about your background and or something that you're hoping to learn with us this evening so that I can make sure to try and address those questions through the presentation as well. And I will share that I am drawn to this work because the refugee experience is the experience of my own family. My mother and my maternal grandparents were refugees who were resettled from Germany to Canada by JIAS, the Canadian Jewish Refugee Resettlement Agency, just after the Holocaust. And my paternal grandparents fled from Berlin to Shanghai, where they were refugees in the Shanghai ghetto for 10 years before they were resettled by the National Highest Organization via San Francisco. So we'll talk a little bit more about what calls us as an organization to this work. I just realized that I can't see the answers in the chat, so you all might be typing things in there and I can't see them, but I imagine that we are all drawn to this work for similar reasons, because it's our family's history, it's our community's history and experience, and certainly we'll talk more about some of the values that drive this work forward for us all as well. Oh, thank you, Daniel. I will say that we are, Rabbi Newman Kamen, thank you for being here. We are just so thrilled to be working with you and your congregation. I'm happy to, if there's anything, not to put you on the spot, but anything that you want to share before I launch in. It's just been an honor to be in partnership with you throughout so many years and so many different programs, and really excited to be doing this work with you and your congregation.
We're so happy to have you. I want to remind you that many years ago you were with us and we were on the verge of hoping we would be able to adopt a Syrian refugee family with you. And then life as we knew it in the United States changed and the doors slammed shut. And, we've all been, basically holding our breath for all these years. So it's our hope that we are here, ready, willing, and able. We've had a tremendous response. I want to make sure that we had the people power to be able to do this mitzvah. And so we're so happy for the people that were able to join us tonight. We know many people were not able to join us, but they're still interested. So I'm really proud of the response we've had from the congregation. And thank you so much for being with us.
Of course. Okay, so I'm going to just provide a brief overview of HIAS, of how we've gotten to this moment and the work that we're going to be doing together. And then I will show a PowerPoint and really walk through what it means to be a co-sponsoring community, because I know that's what we're here to talk about tonight. What can we do? How can we help? What does that look like? So I will set the stage and then show that PowerPoint, and we will sort of walk through it all together. I'm happy to take questions as they arise. So if those are going to Daniel in the chat, feel free to interrupt me. Folks can feel free to unmute and interrupt me as well. I want to make sure that we're sort of addressing questions as they arise. So here in Chicago, Highest Immigration and Citizenship is a program of JCFS Chicago. And we work in partnership with the National Highest Organization to resettle refugees locally. So a refugee, for example, who is abroad, maybe in a refugee camp, would be referred to the Department of State. The Department of State would then refer that individual or family to one of 9 federal refugee resettlement agencies, of which the National Highest Organization is one. And then the national organization has affiliates all across the United States that welcome refugees to their local communities. And so we are the affiliate of the National Highest Organization here in the Chicagoland area. This has been work that has sort of been part of our DNA for decades and decades. I think most folks know of our work in working with the Federation and JCFS and other Jewish organizations to welcome tens of thousands of Jewish refugees from the former Soviet Union in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Certainly our program has remained strong since then, and we've resettled refugees from other parts of the world of all faiths and all backgrounds. Rabbi Newman came and spoke to this, but a number of years ago, our program was closed under the previous administration because the numbers of refugees to this country had dwindled so significantly. But we were thrilled, I think less than a month ago, to hear the news that we've been approved to reopen our refugee resettlement program and participate in the Afghan Placement and Assistance Program, which is what I will dive a little bit more deeply into with you all this evening. Sorry, I got distracted because I was spotlighted and all I saw was my own big face on the screen. I had to change it back to see everyone here. So we all watched not all that long ago as tens of thousands of Afghans were evacuated from Afghanistan and evacuated here on military bases in various places around the country. And so an Afghan Placement and Assistance Program was created, the APA program, to help in the resettlement of Afghans from those military bases into local communities. So whereas the traditional refugee resettlement program helps to resettle refugees from abroad to the United States, this Afghan Placement and Assistance Program, which is quite new, was really created, mirrors the refugee resettlement program, and was really created to support the resettlement of Afghans from the military bases to Chicagoland and other local communities. So when we talk about the work that we're going to be doing together, we are going to be welcoming Afghan families who are already here within the borders of the United States, and we will be welcoming them and helping them create new life in the Chicagoland area. We as a program, as a state, I should say, we are anticipating to welcome and resettle about 1,500 Afghans, that's individuals, not families, 1,500 individuals. And us as a highest program are anticipating to assist 50 of those individuals. So we are the smallest of 6 refugee resettlement agencies, small but very mighty, and really mighty because of the communities like yours that we work with to do this work. We could not do this work alone, and you'll see how we're excited to partner with you and what that will look like as we do this together. Any questions up until this point? Okay. So I will go ahead and share my screen so you can have a visual. That's not just me. There we go. Okay. So when we talk about co-sponsorship, we are really talking about the opportunity to work as an agency in partnership with local communities to welcome folks truly as they are arriving here, as they are getting off of the airplane through their journey to self-sufficiency. So we're going to dive deeper into what that entails, who's involved, what the various components are, what we do, what you all do, and then what we join hands to do in order to really ease the transition of the family, the families that come through our program and the family that you all will be working with. There are, this is a good reminder, a good reason to have slides. You know, as we talk about sort of the why we started with this, right? I shared a little bit of my own family's journey. Folks were thinking about their own family's journeys. Mark Hetfield, who is the president and CEO of the National Highest Organization, has said that we once helped refugees because they were Jewish, and we now help refugees because we are Jewish. And so this is very much what inspires us to do the work. Our program is very much rooted in the Jewish values of tikkun olam, of repairing the world, the belief that everyone, regardless of faith and background, is created in an image of God, and certainly in thinking about our obligation to welcome the stranger. And so we do this work sort of walking in the shoes of Jewish refugees and immigrants who came before us, and then sort of shouldering these values that really propel us to move the work forward. So we talked about this a little bit. that refugees, Afghan families are all connected to a national organization. That's the highest national organization, connected to a local resettlement agency. That's us. And then together we'll work in partnership to welcome folks to the Chicagoland area. As we talk about co-sponsorship, I'm going to share some best practices, some tips and tricks that we've learned throughout the years of doing this, and tips and tricks that we've learned from other congregations that have co-sponsored families previously, either with our program or with other programs in the city. And I will share those, but I want you all to keep in mind that co-sponsorship is not a one-size-fits-all. There's no one-size-fits-all model. You all know your community best. And so in some places, we'll sort of share ideas. And in this meeting together, as we talk together, sort of following this, you all can decide, and we can decide together what you all think will work best for your community in order to move this effort forward. This is the co-sponsorship team from Mishkan, Chicago. They helped resettle one of our last families to arrive before the travel ban in 2017. And so this was the group at the airport welcoming a family. Being at the airport as the family arrives is really one of the highlights of the experience. Everyone is just filled with so much excitement, and it's such a just a really meaningful moment. And really, it's the moment that the partnership and the relationships really begin. So it's quite a beautiful time to be there together. So we'll talk a little bit about the leadership structure, or the various roles that we think are really helpful to have in order to move the effort forward within your congregation. I'm actually going to fast forward for a moment. I find this visual to be helpful. So when we talk about co-sponsorship, we're really talking about 3 different prongs. We're talking about raising funds for the Highest Welcome campaign. And the Highest Welcome campaign is a specific fund that we use just for our refugee families. Part of the dollars raised goes to offset or to provide financial assistance, I should say, for the family. So helping to pay for rent and utilities, seasonally appropriate clothing, food, transportation assistance, particularly in the first 3 months after arrival. But should there be additional needs after that 3 months, then we will continue to work in partnership with the family and with other agencies that will be in the family's life at that point to provide that assistance. And then funds raised also support some of the services and supports that we provide as a program, like interpretation and translation assistance, case management assistance, and so forth. So fundraising is the first prong. The second prong of the co-sponsorship initiative is helping to set up the family's home before arrival. And then the third prong is really walking alongside the family as volunteer tutors and mentors. And that is also a 3-month commitment, a minimum of a 3-month commitment that we ask for in really working quite intensely with us as an agency and with the family to support their resettlement. And so when we think about leadership structure for this initiative, we often think about 1 or 2 sort of project managers who are overseeing all of the moving pieces. And then 1 or 2 people who are overseeing each one of those components to make sure that everything is running smoothly, answering questions, helping to coordinate, etc. You'll see sort of under the apartment coordinator, we have some grocery shopping that needs to be done before the family arrives as well. Grocery shopping, and then helping to prepare a warm meal for the family when they arrive. That can be something that's home cooked. It can be something that's purchased at a restaurant. Sometimes folks who are coordinating the apartment setup also coordinate the grocery shopping, or sometimes there's another group that will do that. That's one of those areas where we look to you to decide what will feel best and what would fit best. And so I put that under there because it could sort of layer on top, or it could be a separate bucket. Any questions? Okay, don't be shy. just unmute yourselves and interrupt me anytime.
I'll ask a question.
Please.
Is there a separate team for going to the airport, or is that available to anybody that wants to?
Great question. So it's really open to anyone and to you all to decide what works best. We always recommend that some folks who are going to be signing up as or volunteering as mentors and tutors be part of that airport reception group, because what we've heard from families is those are really the faces that families remember. And so it's really nice to be able to see some faces in that airport group, the reception group, and then to see some of those folks appear again more consistently throughout the resettlement experience or resettlement journey. But if the family has kids, this is also a great way for families with children at Yisrael to come to the airport and welcome the family, so that the kids can sort of see each other through their own eyes as well. So really it's up to you all and what will fit. It also might depend on the timing. We got a travel notification for 5 a.m. the other day. So, that we might have a slimmer group if it's 5 a.m. than if it's, an afternoon or evening.
We have to have somewhat of a go team ready to go once we know when the people are going to be arriving. There's another question in the chat also. I know we're going to have a case manager that's going to talk about cultural practices, language, dietary. Can we assume that the refugees will be following halal standards?
Yes. Yes. And that will be, we're sort of fast forwarding a little bit here, but we will have a separate training for volunteers who will be, or for folks who will be volunteering as tutors and mentors. And part of that training will include some significant cultural competency piece, likely facilitated by our new Afghan case manager. And so he will be able to speak more specifically to some of the do's and don'ts, the cultural considerations, the foods, and so forth in that particular training as well.
Okay, Jessica,
Yes.
are there refugees going to be vaccinated?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good question. Another one in the chat, I think is similar to what you're saying. Once we know who the family is, we can work with the case manager on things that are specific to that family.
Exactly. So what's actually quite unique about the this Afghan placement and assistance program is we will know details of the family pretty far in advance of them traveling. That's not usually the case with the traditional refugee resettlement program. With the refugee resettlement program, where folks are coming from abroad, we might find out on Monday that they're coming, and then by Friday they're here. And it doesn't allow for a lot of time to prepare for that specific family. In this case, we already know how many families and the family sizes of the families that will be assigned to highest. What we don't know yet is which family will be assigned to you all. We're sort of in the process of figuring that out. We should know shortly. That will include family composition, how many kids. Hopefully by the early December, we'll know exactly when they're traveling. But as we get that information, we will share it all with you so that you can prepare for that particular family.
Do you want to keep going with questions, or you want to get back into it?
I see one more. I'm happy to take one more, and then I'll move along about where refugees will be resettled. And there's a comment here about Rogers Park being very well suited, and that is absolutely true. So our number one challenge really is housing refugee families. It is really hard to find landlords who are open to housing refugees who are coming with, no work history or in the United States, no job lined up, no social security number. And so some of this really depends on how we can build relationships with landlords who are open to housing refugees. If any of you are landlords yourself or work with property management companies or have connections, this is an area where we could really use your support. I will always put that plug in. We try as much as we can to have refugees resettled on the north side of Chicago, Rogers Park, Westridge, Albany Park. And then because we are headquartered in Skokie, and Skokie is also a wonderfully diverse community, then we look to find housing in Skokie. It may be that folks will be resettled out of those areas, but we will try as best as we can for the north side of Chicago and Skokie, given both the diversity of those communities, access to public transportation, other community resources that are appropriate, grocery stores, houses of worship. Those are really the places where refugee communities have resettled over the years. Okay, I'm going to keep moving us. There's some now this is getting great, right? Now all of the questions and the conversation. Sorry, Daniel, I saw you unmute yourself.
I was going to say, go ahead. I'll take care of it.
Okay, great. All right, so let's get into the nitty gritty of how we do all of this. So we talked about the fundraising component. We ask for a $10,000 commitment. And there are a couple of ways that you all can raise these funds. We are happy to set up what's called a Just Giving page for you all. That's an online fundraising portal, really easy. Donations will come directly to Highest Immigration and Citizenship. You all can share this online, on social media, in emails to friends and family. A really easy way to raise the funds. Other congregations have decided to sort of create a fund within the congregation. And so once you all hit that $10,000 mark, you would then make a donation to Highest Immigration and Citizenship at JCFS Chicago. If you exceeded that $10,000 goal, perhaps there's conversation about sponsoring a second family. Perhaps you all decide to hold any additional gifts within your specific fund, so that if additional needs arise for your family, there's already a pot there. And it could be a both and. It could be you all decide to set up the Just Giving and you have a separate fund within your congregation for additional needs for the family. This is really where it is absolutely up to you, and we'll wait for you to tell us how you would like to move forward. We do have folks on our team who, like I said, can help set up that Just Giving page, and also will have sample fundraising scripts to share. So, for newsletters, for emails, for direct mailings, if that's of interest. And again, you take us up on these or you don't, it's okay. You let us know what you need and we are here to support you. That second piece, the apartment setup prong, here is where we are looking to you all to collect furniture and household items and set up the family's home before arrival. And then, like we talked about, go grocery shopping and then prepare the family's first meal. So we have a list of all of the items that are required by the federal government in order to set up the family's home. Many of the items can be donated and gently used. Some of the items, like sheets and towels, for example, do need to be provided new. We recommend using Sign Up Genius, which is an online platform where you can list all of the items that are required and people can go on and put their name down. Jessica wants to buy the dish set and the cookware, for example. You can decide to leave it up to folks to decide if they're going to donate or purchase new and where they're going to purchase from. Or you might decide to create a gift registry at Target, for example. And so Jessica goes and signs up for the dish set and then immediately goes to Target and hits, purchase on the new item. Again, in your hands, what you think would work best for your community. Some best practices here. So it is on us, on our staff team, to find housing for the families. That is not your responsibility. Once we secure that housing and we know when the family is arriving, we will reach out to you to say, December 28th is our move-in date. Like, we're going to do this together. And so that's when you all will want to get everything that's been collected and move it over to the family's home and start setting things up. So really critical to identify if there are folks with trucks or vans in your community. Tell those people to be on call. And then again, as soon as we know travel dates, we'll send that information over to you so you all have as much time as you possibly can to prepare. But really helpful to know who those folks are so that you can call on them when needed. Some congregations have said it's been really helpful. Ooh. Oh, I'm missing. Oh no, here we are. Some congregations have said that it's been really helpful to just have people hold items until they're ready to be brought to the apartment to be set up. Others, congregations with lots of space have said, bring them over whenever you have them. And then on the day of, we'll just bring them from the congregation to the apartment. Again, whatever you think would work best for your community, given your space needs, where folks are located, et cetera. Absolutely up to you. We put this in here, our expectations are not their expectations and perfection is not the goal. Not to say that we don't want things to be wonderful and beautiful and warm and loving for our family, because we want all of those things. We just don't want you to worry if you have 6 towels and it's a family of 7. We are going to be working, with families for the longer term. There's always opportunity to bring more, to share more. And to some extent, we don't want the home to be packed, jam-packed with items, because we want the family to be able to say, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, this is what we need, this is what we don't need. We want to offer space for the family to make the home their home. So we are providing some of the basics. We are making sure they have everything they need to be comfortable. And then in relationship with them, we'll learn what it is that they need more of, need less of, and then really help them acquire what's going to make the space feel like theirs. The next section is the tutoring or mentoring, which gets a little bit deeper. So I'll pause again if there are questions about the fundraising or the apartment setup piece.
I just wanted to clarify, so we do not have a Sign Up Genius set up yet. People have already been emailing and saying, I've got Passover dishes that I'm not using. I've got furniture that we're planning on moving with. I'm keeping track of all those notes, and whoever's going to be the coordinating team for the fundraising, for the apartment setup, will be keeping track of all of those going forward.
Okay, so we'll talk about tutoring and mentoring. Here's where we ask you all to identify about 6 or 8 folks who will volunteer as tutors and as mentors for the family for a minimum of 3 months. So I'll speak to the 3-month commitment first. We, as an initial resettlement site, are contracted to work with the family for 3 months post-arrival for the first 90 days. We then refer the family to one of the other refugee resettlement agencies in the city. It will likely be Refugee One if folks are familiar, though it may, in some cases, it may be one of the other agencies. And so we make that referral for continued case management services up until 5 years. The reason why we make that referral and why we don't provide those services in-house for 5 years is simply because we are, once again, a new agency. We have just had this contract restored, and it's 2 separate funding streams. So we will have the opportunity to have that contract, a different contract, to provide services over the longer term come spring. But because one is a federal contract and one is a state contract and the timing doesn't line up, we are at this time providing services for 90 days. It's called the initial resettlement period before making that referral to another agency. So in our experience, volunteers and co-sponsors create really typically much, much longer lasting relationships. We will be able to provide pretty intensive support for the first 90 days. We're in conversation with the other resettlement agencies about what kind of support they can then provide sort of in months 4 and beyond to you all, because we anticipate that your relationship with the family will continue beyond the first 3 months. But in terms of our intensive support, we can expect it to be within those first 90 days. We sort of separate the tutor and mentor buckets. Tutors are really focused on language acquisition, on homework assistance for the families. It's really about language and learning. And the mentors are the folks that are walking alongside the family, helping them adjust to everything that is new around them, helping to learn how to use public transportation, for example, accessing resources in their community, like the library, like locating houses of worship, locating food pantries or grocery stores, helping to sort mail, helping to troubleshoot when things pop up in the apartment. To be clear, we are also simultaneously doing some of those things, and that's why it's really important to be in communication with our team and your team. We'll ask you all to identify a liaison that will work most closely with our case manager to make sure that we are working together to identify the needs and gaps that the family really needs support in addressing. But we do at the start sort of separate the tutor and mentor roles. Though sometimes the boundaries aren't always that clear. Because, you know, if you're going in and you're supposed to be teaching ESL, but the family has something really significant pop up for them on that day, obviously you're attending to whatever has popped up for them and not practicing, you know, English with them, conversational English. We ask to start with sort of a smaller cohort because we find it allows for, number one, sort of deeper relationship building with the family. Number two, just more efficient coordination. And then typically there are opportunities to grow that group once we identify additional needs for the family. So for example, the family might decide that every Friday is the day that they go grocery shopping. And so perhaps there is a group within your community that is like the Friday grocery shopping crew. And that's their task. And the family knows that on Fridays, these 4 people come to my home, we go to the grocery store together. Whereas maybe the tutors are coming on Saturday and the mentors are coming on Sunday. And so it's this special group or this additional group of folks that are really working with this family on this one specific activity. Again, those are the kinds of things that pop up once we get to know the family and how intense, like what the intensity, what intensity they're looking for in terms of working with your group. So we say 6 to 8 to start. The volunteer onboarding process with JCFS is lengthy and is intense. And so this is an area where it will be pretty important to identify who that initial group of 6 to 8 folks will be, because we'll want to make sure that we sort of start you all off in that onboarding process as quickly as we can. We certainly tried to streamline it quite significantly, but there's still a lot of forms to fill out. You will have to do a background check. There is a TB test that needs to be done. And so the sooner that we can sort of get you started in that process, the better. And then we'll be hosting, as I think I mentioned, a separate training just for volunteer tutors and mentors. It will actually be on December 16th from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. over Zoom. It will be recorded for folks who cannot attend, but that will be a space where we go more deeply into the tutoring and mentorship best practices. We'll have that cultural competency training as part of that training as well. And that will be a training where volunteers from Amis for El will be joined by the volunteers from the other communities that are co-sponsoring families with our program, so that you all can build some relationships across co-sponsorship communities as well. I think I touched on most of this. The key with this entire program is all about flexibility. It's true for the mentorship and for the mentoring and tutoring opportunity. You might show up on a Sunday and the family has forgotten that they have a tutor coming on Sunday and they're not home for a couple of hours and they're not answering the call. We just have to take a deep breath and try to reschedule for the following week. You know, we try to do things to plan consistently. So for example, the family knows that every Saturday the tutor comes and every Sunday there's a mentor that's coming and it's on the same day. But really we just need to follow the lead of the family. Get to know them, what they hope, what they want for their family, what's useful for them. And to just sort of roll with the punches as they come. All right. Okay, I'm going to pause there again. I'm going to unshare my screen so I can see everyone, and then open it up for any other questions, if there are any.
Just maybe to summarize for everyone. So we should be identifying 6 to 8 volunteer tutors and mentors that could start the process. There could be additional opportunities later on as far as teams for grocery shopping and different things like that.
Okay.
But we want to start with this smaller group so they can start the training process soon. And the coordinator in charge of that area, the tutoring and mentoring teams, will be sending you the names.
I'm wondering, when do you expect a family to come? My husband and I are going on vacation, and I'm trying to figure out, at what capacity we could get involved. And when do you expect a family to be coming?
Sure. So we know that all of our families will arrive between the 1st of January and February 15th.
Okay.
We anticipate that most families will actually arrive in January because they're really trying to get folks off of the bases as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
We've had a couple of people ask in the chat about the language issue.
I'm not.
This is another area where flexibility is key. So families are likely to speak Pashto and Dari. And we will have a caseworker who speaks both of those languages. When you all are working with the family, we won't be able to have a translator present. And so if you have a smartphone, we recommend putting Google Translate on there and using Google Translate to talk with the family. We're hearing that because the families will have been on the military bases in the United States for a few months before they arrive here to the Chicagoland area, it is likely that especially some of the kids have picked up a little bit of the language. So there might be an opportunity there to sort of start the conversation in English with some of the younger folks in the family. It may very well be that some of the adults have some language proficiency, English language proficiency as well, though we won't know for sure until they arrive. But our case manager is there, not in the interactions that you're having with the family, but to talk directly with the family and hear from them, and then sort of provide some feedback to you all, and to be sort of a messenger, if you will. And certainly if something arises and we need the case manager or another translator to provide some interpretation and some facilitation, problem solving, for example, then we can absolutely arrange that. But the default is that we won't have language assistance available when you are there with family.
I think broadening that, some of the questions I'm seeing is, do we need to have this to be here? Do you need to have that? Can you talk about some of the type of qualities that would make a tutor more successful or a mentor? Do you have to, is it helpful to have ESL background, or is it more helpful just to be able to use Google Translate? Are you trying to line up ages with the people in the family? Does it make a difference if you're comfortable in person or not? Those kinds of things.
Great. So, if someone has ESL or teaching experience, then we always say that, that's somebody that would likely be a wonderful tutor, but it's not necessary for a tutor to have ESL or teaching experience, right? Patience, flexibility, no matter what, I think those are just important qualities to have regardless of the role that you're going to be occupying with the family. It's not, certainly we don't need to match ages. Right now, what we're seeing in many of the families that are being assigned to us is that the adults in the family are, in most cases, in their 20s, sometimes in their 30s, with very young children. Some very brand new babies, some young children, toddlers, preschoolers. There are some families where there are older children, teenagers, but it's not necessary that you all sort of match your group with theirs in terms of age. It is preferable to be in person if folks are comfortable being in person. Our JCFS policy is that when folks are in person, they should be masked. So our case manager, for example, will be masked when they're in person with the family. And so I think it is absolutely a reasonable expectation that you all would have to be masked with the family, and expect them to be masked as well if you're indoors, for example. I'm poking through the chat. Daniel, did that speak to some of your?
The only one I mentioned that I think, how tech savvy do you have to be to use Google Translate or something like that?
Oh,
or is there a role, if you're not, that you might be better suited for?
I think with a little bit of coaching, Google Translate is not overwhelmingly challenging for somebody who's not tech savvy.
Okay.
Whether Google Translate actually translates accurately is probably more, sometimes more challenging than how to use that technology.
We have another question in chat. We've got two actually. How does the money work for grocery shopping, etc.?
Sure. So one of the rules that we will have is our case manager will help the family apply for public benefits, and that includes SNAP or food stamps. There is always a lag time between when the family applies for food stamps and when they actually receive food stamps. And so that is a time where we will absolutely be supplementing with the funds that you all will have raised for the family, as well as funds that the family receives from the federal government when they're first resettled. So every family every individual, I should say, is given a minimum of just over $1,000 per person, up to $1,225 per person. And that's for the agency to use on behalf of the family. So for example, putting the security deposit down for their apartment, being able to purchase food in addition to what they will be eligible for with SNAP, and certainly in that time period between when they apply for SNAP and when they receive the benefit. What we don't spend on behalf of the family, then we give to the family at the end of their 90-day period with us. Which is also why we look to raise additional funds for the family, so that we can, for example, pay for rent for a longer period of time, or give more money to the family as pocket money so that they can use that to purchase whatever it is that they are needing.
So I'm sorry, that was actually my question. And my question is not just what is the source of the funding, sort of who controls it. So like, who's holding the SNAP card when you go to the grocery store? Is that the responsibility of the family? Is that the responsibility of the mentor?
Great question. So that will be the responsibility of the family. We want them to have as much agency as possible. Where we sometimes do need to step in is around helping folks understand income and expenses. And how to sometimes, there have absolutely been scenarios where we've had to sort of do some counseling and say, I think we should put the brakes on this purchase, and it is often around technology, until we can help the family really identify how they're going to pay for all of the other expenses like rent and utilities, and then, start saving slowly so that they can have that pot of money for that bigger purchase that they're really eyeing, for example. So that's where sometimes our staff and you all as mentors do come in, more as counselors. But when you all are out with the family, it will be the family holding those cards and deciding what they would like to purchase.
We have another question. Should we expect, it just moved. Should we expect them to have access to a computer at home and be able to Zoom?
So to be determined is the answer for that. We have learned that there are some federal dollars that are being allocated specifically for technology purchases. We are still in process of learning how much those dollars are. Does it mean one laptop per school-aged child? Does it mean one laptop per family? So some of those details are still being worked out. But you can assume that they will have at least a computer. And then I think we are assuming that they will likely need some coaching around how to use Zoom, for example.
Okay, here's another question. Of the $10,000, how much is used to go to highest staff and how much is used toward the family?
Great question. In full transparency, that is also a detail that we are currently working out. What we know for certain is that we're not going to have co-sponsors for every individual and family that arrives through our program from January to February. So what we are truly trying to do is figure out who is coming, how many folks will have co-sponsors, what sizes are the families, what sizes of apartments are they going to need, and how can we make sure that we are funding each one of those families equitably over at least 90 days, but hopefully longer than that. So we are very much in the midst of crunching all of those numbers because our desire is for the dollars to be used for the family, but we do know that we will have to hold some back for operations to make sure that we have the dollars for translation interpretation assistance, for case management, for example. So I'm happy to share that, we intend on being fully transparent with that information once we have crunched those numbers. But because this is all new and happening so quickly, we are still crunching. Oh, wonderful. Annette, I see your comment about the organization that provides Chromebooks. So would love to chat with you about how we might be able to secure some of those for our families. Other questions, comments, thoughts?
I have some thoughts.
Please,
Which
yes.
is not for you, Jessica. It's really for the volunteers. Because as I said, we've had really an overwhelming response, and I think it will be up to Dan and the team to figure out how to structure all of this so that we can be helpful and effective. But one of the things that that I've said to Dan many, many times already, but I feel like I want to say to the group, is this has to be a self-sustaining volunteer project. So it can't be the kind of thing where it's like, oh, I was supposed to get the groceries today and I can't show up, and somebody calls the office and asks Nancy or Brian to take care of it. Like, there have to be backup people on the team that are ready. I mean, things come up, of course, but it has to be, the team has to be self-sufficient in being able to pull this off without backup from the synagogue. So I want people to just be really sure that there's a team that can take this on. And by the way, I will also just say to the group that one of the things that we were concerned about was the fundraising component, but people are already making donations. That may be the easiest piece, easier than I thought of this. It has certainly sparked the interest and the compassion of people that want to be able to help.
I was thinking the same thing on the financial side. Thank you, Rabbi. I think our biggest challenge is going to be, we have a lot of very excited people who want to help. And I think the coordination, we need some very strong coordinators in each of these different groups that can help put people in place and have that backup plan so that if things change, which they do, boom, you have somebody that's ready to go. So it's the organization, the communication, the managing of the details with the number of volunteers that we have. That's going to be, I think, the biggest opportunity. I won't even call it a challenge.
I'll add what we typically see with the tutors and mentors is that we might start out with a group of 6 or 8. And then just naturally or organically, that group might get a little bit tighter. Over the first 3 months, there might be really consistent rotation of folks. And then after 3 months, or maybe even during those first 3 months, things come up for people, right? We can't always control what's happening in our lives. Things come up, or the relationship feels a little bit more organic between some folks and other folks. And so we expect some of that to happen. We also expect that at some point it becomes less of a tutor, mentor, and family relationship, but it does become more of a friendship as well. And so, we expect the relationships to sort of evolve and for people to be able to step in and out for each other. Once we sort of address all of the questions, I'll pull up a couple of more slides, some best practice recommendations on how folks communicate with each other who are working together, particularly in those roles, because there's often folks are just often in rotation with the family. So it's important that folks are communicating with one another as well after and in between visits.
Can I just clarify one more thing? The 6 to 8 volunteers / tutors / mentors, that would be the number that you want to start with as a group. You would figure they would have tutoring on one day with one person, mentoring 1 day a week with one person, and they would kind of rotate every week with a different person.
Yeah, it depends on how you all want to structure it. I think what we've typically seen is like 2 people go on a certain day. So 2 tutors on Saturday, two tutors on Sunday, for example. It can be really any day that works for you all and for the family. But we say usually to plan for 2. That way, if one person cannot make it, there is still somebody who might be able to step in. And sometimes it's just helpful, to have another person there to bounce ideas off of, to try and do some of that language troubleshooting together. And we are expecting families of varying sizes, but certainly some on larger sides, 6, 7 kids. And so, to have more bodies there to support, I think is helpful. I see there's a question in the chat about the funds raised, whether funds are held by highest and distributed to the landlords for rent, or is a lump sum given to the family. So when the family first arrives, we do give them cash in hand. It's $50 per person and $25 per child. And we divide that money equally between, if there are 2 parents, between both parents. Because we want the money to be spent sort of equitably, to be held equitably by both parents. The other funds are spent by highest on behalf of the family in consultation with the family once rent and utilities are paid for, and security deposit and so forth. So if there are additional funds raised, so for example, a family of 6 is going to have a minimum of just over $6,000 from the federal government, not counting any additional funds that are raised by the co-sponsoring community. But because the federal government provides a minimum of $1,025 per person, then they will have just over $6,000 as a family when they arrive. In addition to that, they'll have the funds that are raised by the co-sponsoring community. So we pool those dollars. We take care of the security deposit or move-in fee, the rent and utilities for 3 months, the clothing, the transportation assistance. We'll provide monthly bus cards for all of the parents. And then as we're working with the family intensely over the first 90 days, as additional needs come up, we will spend on behalf of the family. At the end of the 90-day period, if there are dollars that are remaining, then we provide funds to the family, so that by that point they should have a bank account that's open as well. And so part of the teaching is helping them use that bank account, access the funds, the budgeting piece that we spoke about earlier. It's not to say that anyone expects the family to be pros at this on day 90 or 91, but we begin the process of them being able to handle and manage their own finances. By then they will have also started to receive the benefits that they are eligible for, cash assistance, SNAP, Medicaid. And so it's sort of a learning process that we navigate organically with the family throughout that first 3-month period. But typically, and certainly at the start, we are spending the money on behalf of the family for payments to landlords, utility companies, things like that. Sure. Okay, let me pull up. There's not a whole lot left, but just to sort of start planting some seeds about communication, because it is really a key component to a successful effort. So number one is we want to make sure that there is transparent and clear communication between us as a program and you all as the volunteers. And that includes things like we help the family apply for their benefits. We anticipate that the family may receive their benefits when. 2, conversations that the caseworker is having with the families about their specific needs and wants and concerns. Because we anticipate that while we are supporting the family from our end, we know that you all are also supporting the family from your end, and we want that to be happening in coordination. That said, it is not necessarily helpful, and certainly sometimes overwhelming for our case manager to be in touch with all of the volunteer mentors and tutors. And so we do ask that for the duration of this project together, you all identify a liaison or perhaps 2 liaisons to our program. At the start, it tends to be, I'll just sort of call on Daniel for a moment. It tends to be, the person who is sort of coordinating the effort at large. Once things are moving, the apartment's been set up, the family is here, the work is happening, it tends to then shift. And maybe the mentor or the tutor coordinator ends up being the liaison, because they are both in touch with the mentors and tutors, and they're also in touch with our program. But we just want to make sure that there's communication, clear communication happening between both parties. And we will ask for just a short report that you all send to us every other week. It'll be something online. Typically the mentor or the tutor coordinator do that together, or one may just fill that out. But that's just so that we can keep that in our record as well. What then becomes really important is that you all, especially the tutors and the mentors, are talking to one another. And so, for example, one congregation has created a Google Doc. And so if one volunteer goes in on Sunday and works with the family, at the end of the day, they go back home and they fill out this document, they write the date, they talk about the things that they did, and then they indicate if there are any other items for follow-up, or things that the family talked about that the next volunteer might want to address at the next visit. Or maybe the family said, actually next time somebody comes, we'd really like you to take us to go buy some new school supplies for our child, right? Then the person knows, okay, the next time I go, we're not just going to be in the home, we're going to be shopping for school supplies. Lots of other ways to do this. And I trust you all have a wealth of knowledge and experience in figuring out, how to share this kind of information, maybe not for co-sponsorship particularly, but certainly in other aspects of your lives and work. And so, whatever you think will work best for you, we actually would love to hear from you about what ends up working best for you, so that we can also share that as a possibility for future congregations that co-sponsor with us as well.
I'll just say that we can train you on how to use Google Docs if you're not familiar with them. Whatever technological tools we use, it'll be simple. So it's a click to a website where you can go and see the latest information. Nothing more complicated than you would already have to be able to do to get onto this Zoom meeting.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Daniel. And we talked about all of this. Okay. Truly just one extra slide. Great. So what's next? I see in the chat. Daniel, do you want to take that one, or what's next from?
Yeah. So after this, great. Thank you, Jessica.
Sure.
Excellent presentation, and we're already an hour in. But I feel like we're just getting started. So we're going to be figuring out who wants to work on what areas, right? The fundraising, the apartment setup, the tutoring and the mentoring. We're going to be sending out emails specifically for what groups you want to be involved with. And then we're going to be looking for those 6 to 8 volunteer tutor and mentors so they can start that training process. If you're especially motivated and feel like you've got the ability to organize the information and communicate and be a coordinator for one of these groups, definitely we need people to step up. Like the rabbi said, this is going to be a volunteer-driven 100% effort. And so we're counting on some really great, strong, committed people, for a 3-month period. Ideally, we have a relationship that lasts much, much longer. Jessica, you mentioned something that was just the most beautiful thing when we met, that you had, this doesn't happen all the time, but there was a refugee family that actually knitted was it a chuppah for a wedding? A Jewish wedding? I mean, you can't imagine anything more beautiful than that. But it's going to be a sprint to get ready, and then we're going to wait, and then they're going to be here, and we're going to jump to it, and then it's going to be that 3 months intensive period to do everything the best that we can, knowing that we're not going to be perfect. No, we're going to make a lot of mistakes, but no one expects anything more than that. So I'm excited. I'm excited about it.
When you said sprint, I just thought to myself, but like, think about the adrenaline rush, right? It is fast. And it is intense, and it requires a lot of coordination, and it is one of the most rewarding experiences. It is It is such an exciting, tremendous opportunity. And we are here to support you all. You know, it's a volunteer-driven experience. You are not alone. You are here with us as support. You are here with a number of other co-sponsoring communities that are diving in just as quickly and just as deeply as you all are. And so we can help to make connections so that you all can build relationships and learn from one another. We are open to creating spaces that are going to be helpful to you all. So we are open to that feedback and those ideas as well.
You know, I said we're going to be sending out some emails. I have all of your email addresses, made sure of it, but I just put my email into the chat. So if you have any questions, as soon as we hang up, oh, I forgot to ask this, you can feel free to email me as well. I know Jessica was on there, but I'm more than happy to at least see if I can answer or find out an answer for you. And as you're thinking about how you'd like to contribute, whichever area it is, start sending me your ideas and we'll start keeping track of that. And if you can hear the violin in the back, that's my 9-year-old practicing violin. So.
Great. Well, we are thrilled to be in partnership with you. Just so excited to dive in deep and to roll up our sleeves and to do this work. We've got a couple of months to prepare, and then the moment will be here in front of us. And so we're really thrilled and very excited to be doing this with all of you.
All right. Thank you everybody for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, Daniel.
Have a good night.